nami je profesor dr. René von Schomberg, specialist z področja znanstvenih in tehnoloških študij in filozof, ki že od leta 1998 sodeluje z Evropsko komisijo, z Generalnim direktoratom za raziskave in inovacije, trenutno pa je vodja skupine za odprto znanost. Spregovoril bo o vrednotenju raziskovalnega dela ravno z vidika odprte znanosti. Professor von Schomberg, after a short introduction of your work and positions, the screen is yours. Please.
Thank you very much, Professor Jasna Maskom. Thank you for the kind introduction. I think what they say in the Dutch language, I think it's not proper English, but it's something like that Professor Stephen Curry cut the grass from my garden, because his thoughts are very much aligned with what I am thinking on this area. And also it's actually sort of a response to what he just said. I mean, we at the European Commission have been, I hope, at the forefront of open scholarship to push stakeholders or to enforce a sort of breakthrough in this. But let me start with some of the odds in this situation. When I started 10 years ago, around 10 years ago on this topic, pointing out to what Stephen just was saying, our science works against the public interest. Nobody in the House of the European Commission was actually interested. They didn't want to hear it, actually. And there is a paradox in this, and it was the same when I was at university. Nobody, of course, researchers, academics, they're all very intelligent people, and they all know that this matrix doesn't make sense. I mean, it's intellectually just not tenable. In any discussion, you can wipe it off the table in 2 seconds, yet it drives our system. And it's very interesting to see that the university I was then working for, nobody took it seriously until our university was on the top of the list. We were the best university of such and so, and everybody got a bottle of wine and there were parties. So you see, it's like nobody takes it seriously, but everyone wants to be on the top of the list. And this is also, and this is more tragically in practicing open science, or it's actually better to call it open scholarship and open research, because it includes also the humanities, of course. I want to start first in the first part of my talk a little bit about the rationale of open science, what we actually have to understand what it is. The first part is very determined by my personal thoughts, although the overlap with what the European Commission is doing at the moment is very strong. Later on, I will come up with what we as an institution have done and will do in the future on this topic. What is actually open scholarship? Well, I define it as simply as this: sharing knowledge and data as early as possible in the research process in open collaboration with all relevant knowledge actors. It's actually a simple thing which is actually good to do for science and good to do for the public interest. The implications is actually twofold for this. It means open science is open to knowledge sources, be it publications or data or other scientific outputs, institutions or other knowledge actors, and even including citizens. So the rationale of open science is in order to practice open science, we have certain expectations for it. Why it is better actually than the closed and arguably too competitive science, which is now dominating the scene. And I think we have to look to what the research cycle, which you can see in the inner circle of this figure, relates in all its aspects to open science. Research normally starts with a research agenda. What do you want to investigate? what are your topics. Now, in terms of open science, this means that your research agenda should actually open up to other knowledge actors. So that part actually relates to the openness to other knowledge actors. It drives research then, of course, more towards societal challenges, for example. Now, even the scientific discovery phase, so the real scientific part, has to have a relation with openness. Openness to knowledge sources, using open infrastructures, using open knowledge sources available. So actually all the elements of, I will not refer to all the aspects of the research cycle, have a relationship to open science and its practice. Now, it is the same message what Stephen Curry just already said. We do open science in order to make it more efficient, because it will make it more efficient, because it enables us to share resources. It doesn't make sense to do the same climate research in England and in the Netherlands. We can share resources, we can collaborate. It will make it more reliable, because data will be better verified in an open and transparent context than in a closed science. And of course, it will be more responsive to societal challenges if we involve societal actors in research and to drive research actually towards the societal relevant outputs. And the COVID-19 is actually a tragedy, but a gift for open science, because everybody starts to realize if we want to have a vaccine, we cannot do it in a normal way science now operates. We would wait 10 years before we will have a vaccine. The only way to get it fast is to share data as early as possible. And this is what's happening in an unprecedented scale currently at the global level, as we indeed practiced in the case of Zika and Ebola as well. But the question, of course, is we treat the public health issues as an exceptional case. But why it's an exceptional case? Why not apply to all the important sustainable development goals? Now, this is actually what we try, or what we intend to do under the new framework program for European research, to install open science practices, mandate them for the sustainable development goals for a large part of the program. So I think we are making a breakthrough there. Now, what does open science practice actually mean in terms of career dilemmas? Well, the situation is actually, I think, as such. Imagine that you have, as a researcher, great research results. None in the scientific community is aware of it. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to share it? Do you think it's a good idea for science? Of course, the answer is yes. Everybody would say it's a very good idea to share it with others. Are you going to do it then? And then you say, no, I'm not going to do it because it's bad for my career. I first want to have it published. I don't want to have other people to know my results, that they use it or publish it earlier than me. So there you go. This is the delay of the research process actually Stephen was already referring to. And this is the trap where we are currently in. Intellectually, we know it's better to practice open science. Practically, we don't do it because we are not rewarded to do it. Now, this brings me to the heart of my talk. How do we change the rewards and incentive system? Now, in the practice of closed science, actually it is based on establishing individual procedures. It still follows the model of an individual brilliant scientist who wants to get a prize or get a high reward in a high impact journal in order to establish his or her prestige. The focus is very much on scientific frontiers and also on new and sexy results. That means that in a journal like Nature, arguably one of the most important scientific journals in the world, will only select articles to be published which are selected by the editorial authors, not necessarily articles which are relevant for society, but which are sexy for the scientific community. And in the end, 7% of the papers which are submitted to Nature will actually be published. And all these others have to look for other journals. And again, this of course causes enormous delay in publication. So you have to have endurance when it comes to this type of things, when you want to have something published in those high impact factors. Citations, I think contrary to the expectations, you will have to wait, obviously because of the delay in the process. Maybe you want to do this all in order to get to a better university which is higher ranked. Let's say you want to go to Princeton, this motivates you. Now, let's say we now are going to practice open science in the sense I just presented it. What does this mean? It means another way of working. It's establishing a network. It's organizing your work in a collaborative way, even globally, with other researchers to work together on common research agendas relevant for society. Now, the focus is therefore much more on societal impact, on societal challenges, and for example, the Sustainable Development Goals, which we try to address with missions across Horizon Europe, the new framework program for research. So sharing and publishing early what does it actually, well, I should say, what does it mean actually for publishing? Well, for publishing, it means that you actually share already your information prior to publishing. Publishing is relativized in the context of open science. It still happens, but it's not the primary focus. The primary focus is sharing knowledge. And this actually leads you, even if you publish, to a swifter and higher citation rates. This also the statistics show you. People who publish in open access have a higher and swifter, because of earlier publication, citation rate. So even if you are addicted to citations, which I think is also not a good idea, but even then it works you well if you practice open science. And if you want to engage in mobility, you may discover that open science is ever more a global practice coming bottom up by scientists, because scientists, they are also motivated to address societal challenges that don't necessarily are aiming at high impact factors. And open science is becoming a practice against, although the system doesn't reward it, but digital means will enable it ever more and more. So it's growing against the stream, so to speak. Okay, so in other words, you know, shifting to open science is, as we actually call it now in European Commission since a couple of years, actually changing to a new modus of operandi of science. The current system is rewarding individual competing scientists to get scientific precision. It's based on publishing as much and as fast as possible, where excellence is much more a high developed criterion within the scientific community. Actually, nobody can define it, but it's a way of saying, okay, we scientists decide ourselves what is important and to keep others out. It's self-referential. It incentivizes researchers to produce particular outputs, mainly publications, and the use of quantitative metrics actually drives the system to, or drives researchers to produce more and more papers, not necessarily relevant. And this is why I'm saying our system as it is right now forces researchers to work very hard, and I think they do, and become very productive. And productive means publishing lots, and they do, but the system as such becomes unproductive by doing so. So there is a paradox, and this we have to address. It's clear that COVID-19, as I said, it is a gift. And the results to get a quick vaccine is, of course, the result of collaborating and sharing information and addressing an issue of societal impact. But it means public investment. You cannot leave it up to private actors. You cannot leave it up to the industry alone. And industry alone would not even start developing a vaccine if they would not have been subsidized to such an extent as now with COVID-19. So collaboration, research behavior becomes the attention of the focus of open scholarship, not so much the scientific output, but the research behavior, how you collaborate, how you work together with others, how you produce open results. You could say that that researchers should be incentivized in the open research context to have a particular research behavior. So in terms of sharing knowledge data, collaboration, transdisciplinary with other knowledge actors. And this is what we intend to do under the new framework program. And this is what we wanted to convince other actors in the world, not just the Commission, because publishers, research funders, research libraries, academia, research organizations, all these actors have to work together and become mutually responsive in order to change the system. One actor alone cannot do it. So this brings me to the Commission type part of my talk. We have set up in 2016 a broad open science policy platform, which consists of 25 stakeholders, with the major organizations involved, in order to address all aspects of open science. And we soon, of course, discovered, and we knew this, that the rewards and incentive system is actually the bottleneck of open science. And the platform, which made its final report in 2020, I will share you a link where you can download the report in the chat, has made recommendations for stakeholders and others to advance on this issue. I will shortly present some outcomes. So it's the broad message is actually that we want to have an academic career structure that rewards a broad range of outputs, practices and behaviors to maximize contributions to a shared research knowledge system. We will set up together with the Open Science Policy Platform as a post-mortem a collaborative platform with pilots on where institutions, organizations, or even countries have experienced, have made experiments with new models for rewarding and incentivizing researchers. I think one example is actually from my home country. They abandoned completely bibliometrics from the research evaluation protocol. They have made open science a rewardable practice. It becomes part of the evaluation system. And indeed, research behaviors will be rewarded rather than just research outputs. Now, I have 4 key recommendations of the platform, so which all these stakeholders seem to agree upon. So everybody, of course, doesn't like the impact factor. It's still the important thing which dominates the research scene, but everybody finds it rubbish. So this is where we agree upon. We also seem to agree that most indicators we want to use in the system, in the end, are qualitative in nature. Even if you use quantitative or want to use quantitative indicators, in the end, you have to make a qualitative assessment of the research context. What is very important actually in the implementation of open science is that researchers will need to be identified by, for example, ORCID, to make open infrastructures, which enables the sharing of research results at an early stage possible, becomes available. The same is true for using, data or metadata for publications, etc. And as you possibly know, we at the Commission have been trying to establish since 5-6 years the so-called European Open Science Clouds, which is an initiative to federate existing research infrastructures across Europe with each other, across disciplines, which will make it possible to share data across disciplines and across nations in real time. So I will shortly present you the evaluation of our policies. You know, back in 2008, we only started with open access policies, which eventually became in 2014, so since the last 6 years, actually mandatory. All research which has been financed by us have to be published in open access since 2014. But since 2017, it's also true for open data, and for the new framework program, we actually make even research, data management plans mandatory for getting funds. Now, this is all very technical, but we have for the new framework program a lot of articles relating to open science. You will see a real push to make this open science practice a reality. What is very important in all these elements is that open science practices can vary very much from discipline. I mean, in the humanities, it means something different than in environmental science, for example. So the research practices and how open science has to be defined in the context of specific work programs responding to these thematic disciplines or issues. But in the end, we will, but it all is about driving research in a way that sharing knowledge and collaborating becomes a major incentive for researchers, because this will enable the shift to open science. Now, a good example is the COVID-19 data platform, which is actually a sort of pilot for the open science cloud. It rapidly led to enormous sharing of data and information around COVID-19. Again, of course, it shows the importance of a public interest in this field to make the investments necessary. Now, to sum this all up, we will start under the so-called European research area. So that is not just the Commission, this is a research fund. The Commission is only 5% of the research funds available in Europe. Member states carry the other 95%, mostly national. But we want to address them commonly with all member states. We will launch a platform actually already early next year, where peer-reviewed open access publishing will be cost-free for all the beneficiaries of our framework program. It will also include preprints and so on. Some other elements which also relates to open science, which we want to address with member states, is to promote equality, diversity, and inclusiveness in science. And not the least, also to organize citizen campaigns and involve citizens in research. You will see that will be a major element in the mission-oriented research elements of the future research program. So to comment up, it means actually that open science is coming very soon to your theater, and or otherwise you just don't receive funding for it, because it becomes very, very, very practical. As I already say, with the example of with the Netherlands, an agreement between all universities and funders is essential to make the breakthrough. They have to agree on that we have to shift from research outputs focus to research behavior output. This is my personal website. You will see also a lot of free downloadable resources if you want. This is a WordPress website. I will share you also the link of our Commission website, where the publication of the Open Science Policy Platform report is available. So I want to thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was understandable, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Professor von Schomberg. It was understandable, of course. Open science certainly is a concept that has challenged and will continue to challenge the research community and all the stakeholders involved. So my question actually would be that basically we are aware of the need to change, but this change is slow. What is your advice on how to practically address modernization of research assessment at European national funders? and universities and institutes?
Well, thank you, Jasna. This of course was the key challenge. You know, this is why the setup of the Open Science Policy Platform was so important, to bring all the organizations which have a stake in the rewards and incentive system or somehow are related to it, have to come around the table and of course agree upon it. And they have sometimes opposing interests, and this is why it's a long process. But everybody now realizes, now also at the stakeholder level, that one has to do something. And so there are some scratches in the wall now, where we can break out of this strange paradox that everybody intellectually knows that the system as we have now is not tenable, but we don't practice it yet sufficiently. So I think the breakthrough can only be by having agreements with funders and university organizations how we are going to reward research. So the funders, like the Commission now is will take as an example, will do, because if we fund research differently and rewards researchers differently with our funding system, then the researchers will follow, and the researchers follow the money. If you give them money to publish in Nature, they will do that. But if you fund them to collaborate, like with COVID, then they will do that. So it's obvious that we have to this is the way we have to change the system. But like us, the Commission is only a small part of the stakeholders. We actually are not in place to tell universities what to do or not to do. I mean, this is not our mandate even. But this is, we can only mediate this discussion, and this is what we try to do with we have tried to do with the Open Science Policy Platform, which we try to continue to do with the European Research Area, to work with member states to convince also nationally to make steps forward. In some countries, major steps have been made, like I gave the example of the Netherlands, but also other countries like Finland or Ireland have made major steps. And I think it takes time, but I think we will get there.
Thank you. There is a question concerning Netherlands. Isn't it also risky for the Netherlands to lead the world in this new approach, to share knowledge and the rest of the world remains closed, metric driven?
Yes, that's again the dilemma. You know, you have this, as I said, on the individual level. If you say, okay, I have great research data, you're going to publish it. Is it a good idea for science? You say yes, but practically you're not going to do it. The same is, of course, if the Netherlands say you all have to collaborate, but it doesn't help you to go to Princeton, then maybe you don't want to do it. So this is, as Stephen also already said, this is why we have to change it internationally. We cannot only change it at one level. Of course, research funding is still also very much nationally organized, and like in the case of the Netherlands, the research funding and the dependence of researchers of that funding system is to such an extent that the risk is not so high for so much researchers if the research funding will progressively promote open science. But of course, there can be an individual career assessment idea of individuals behind it and thinking, okay, yeah, but I still want to publish in Nature if I want to have a job in Harvard or something. That's true. We have to address it globally in the end.
Thank you. Another question from the audience. Are open science rewards and incentives present in the current European Commission project proposals assessment criteria?
Yeah, that is a very good question. I actually forgot to mention that. So we will try to, so with the new framework program, so starting next year, so in 2021, we work on modified criteria for getting funding. And one element is to bring open science under the excellence criterion in. So maybe you know, normally we evaluate research according to its impact, societal, economically, etc., but also according to the excellence criterion, which is normally the most dominant criterion in getting funds. But open science will be taken into account. Open science practices by the researcher in its history will be taken into account, and also for how the research will be framed. So for how your research proposal will look like and how it will address open science practices will be part of your evaluation. I mean, we are still discussing this because this is, of course, the critical element. People are very addicted to the old excellence criterion, which is empty. But we want to fill this with open science, and so this is. But it's most likely. Well, there will be suddenly a reference to it because already in the framework program, as I showed you, there are a lot of regulations on open science. But we want to address it in the excellence criteria.